again. Last time we talked about how we decipher which door is the right door for us to walk through, and how God often opens doors to us that will help us grow in sanctification that helps shape us into the image of Christ. In this third session of All the Places to Go, we'll focus on how our attitude and heart posture impacts the way we walk through the doors God opens for us. John will reveal that how we walk through a door is often much more important than which door we walk through. We'll also hear stories from Linda and Michael, who are both using the opportunities that God has given them to make an impact on those around them. Let's listen to Linda's story.
I start off my morning with prayer. I seek the Lord before I leave the house. My day begins at 2:30 a.m. I've been an operator for 28 years, and my first train leaves Walnut Creek at 4:20 a.m. Driving motor coach, you're dealing with hundreds of people with attitudes. So I take it personal. I change that around to help me with my Christian growth. So Lord, help me to have a good attitude when someone comes on, might not have a bad day. Sometimes yell at me and I might not respond. I might not give you that reaction that you want. Why? Because I'm always trying to be aware that God is watching me. He's watching my attitude. He's watching my reaction. So you have to learn to roll with whatever comes through your door. Whatever that might be, someone who's disabled, someone who might have a personal problem before they came to get on your bus, someone with bags that they cannot carry on the bus by themselves. I mean, every second changes. Me having the attitude that I have here at work, caring and helping others, it is paid off because now you have so many passengers who take your bus. They'll say like this, "Oh, that's the nice operator. That's the lady who always help us," or "She'll get your bags," or "She always call out her stops." They recognize me. And sometimes they'll wait for my bus. They won't even take anyone else's bus. Or "We want your bus." You know, things like that. So it paid off in a way that I have gotten so much respect out here till it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable how the seniors and those with disabilities look forward to seeing me because they know I'm gonna do my job. And then not only that, it gave me the opportunity to meet the gentleman who wrote the Chronicle. He rode my bus, if I'm not mistaken, several months. And during that several months, he was taking notes of me. This man had me down to the T. He was writing an article on how do you keep a good attitude in the workplace. And the article was about that, me keeping a good attitude. And I tell him, I said, you know what? I put God first. I put him first in the morning. He's the start of my day. Some people start off with coffee. Well, I start off with Jesus Christ. And so I tell him, and without him, I couldn't do it. I couldn't have this attitude. I couldn't serve you, but I'm serving it in Jesus' name. Why? Because he's watching, he's looking, he's taking notes of my life. When it's all finished and done with, I want him to say, well done.
Linda's one of the most amazing human beings I have ever met. And when I read her story in the San Francisco Chronicle, we invited her to speak at our church. After hearing her talk, people with all kinds of high-tech Silicon Valley dreams were moved to a standing ovation at every service by this woman who drives a bus. No kidding, they were so encouraged by her story, they stood in line by the dozens after every service just for the chance to talk to her. She was a rock star at our church. Why were people so moved? Why do people on Linda's route wave other buses by just so they can ride on her bus? Why did a writer from one of the great newspapers in the country spend months observing Linda for an article? Attitude. Linda sees the opportunities that God gives her every day on her bus route as an opportunity to please Him, an occasion to serve others, even with difficult passengers. When the doors of her bus open at every stop, she doesn't always know who or what will be waiting for her, doesn't always get to make that choice. But the choice she does have control over is how she will respond. And that's the choice we all have as we cross the thresholds of the doors that God places before us. I am not in charge of which doors will be presented to me through my life. I may not be able to force a closed door open. I am not in charge of what's behind the door, but I get to be in charge of one thing. When a door is open, I get to choose how I will respond. See, sometimes it's what you do after the door opens that makes all the difference. So often in life, when we make a choice, we're tempted to obsess over the question of, did I choose the right door or not? Many times this happens when it helps the least, when we're frustrated or depressed with the door that we've chosen. But the reality is, if I stew over what might have been, I rob myself of the energy and spirit to see all the small doors God sets before me every day. I rob myself of precisely the spiritual assets I need to find life with God right here, right now. In other words, a lot of times what matters most is not the decision I make, but how I throw myself into executing it once it's made. In other words, a lot of times it's better to go through the wrong door with your best self than the best door with your wrong self. Sometimes the way in which I go through a door actually matters more than which door I happen to go through. Very often, we fail to go through open doors with our wholehearted way because we experience what is sometimes called buyer's remorse. Key spiritual decisions often require high effort, high responsibility, high commitment. That means they will often involve buyer's remorse. Now, we see a classic example of this kind of buyer's remorse in the Bible in the book of Exodus. Israel is thrilled to go through God's open door of liberation from Egypt and slavery. But shortly after God opens the door, the Red Sea, after they cross it, buyer's remorse kicks in, and the people say, oh man, we remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt for nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. But now our strength is dried up and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. Meanwhile, Moses, their leader, is having second thoughts about his decision to go through the leadership door. Moses said to the Lord, why have you treated your servant so badly? Why have I not found favor in your sight that you lay the burden of all this people on me? Did I conceive this people? Did I give birth to them? That you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries a sucking child. Where am I to get meat to give all these people? For they come weeping to me and say, give us meat to eat. I'm not able to carry all this people alone. They're too heavy for me. If this is the way you're going to treat me, put me to death at once. Now, those are some serious second thoughts. See, having buyer's remorse is an inevitable part of walking through open doors. It's not fatal, it's not final, it's not even unusual. In fact, second thoughts are a natural side effect of making hard decisions. And this can help you, awareness of this can help you avoid the I just don't feel peace about it trap that people, especially church people, so often fall into. In this scenario, we try to understand the presence of our own internal anxiety as a supernatural rationale to avoid taking on a challenge, rather than seeing it for what it is, a simple sign of emotional immaturity. Someone might ask us, why don't you end that relationship in which you're behaving like a needy, desperate, clinging vine with a person who's just not that into you? Or, why don't you have an honest conversation with that person in your workplace, family, small group who's behaving badly and whom you are secretly judging and resenting? Or, why don't you just get out of your rut by taking this trip or taking that class or volunteering in that area? And I answer, well, I would, but I just don't have peace about it. See, if having peace about it were the ultimate criteria for going through open doors, nobody in the Bible would have gone through any door. In fact, in most of the circumstances we read, following God's calling involves obeying God in faith at times when nothing about His plan was comfortable or maybe even made sense. The whole "I don't feel peace about it" is so much garbage so often. Another aspect of Linda's attitude that's so compelling is this wholehearted obedience. She just embodies what Paul talks about in Colossians, the 3rd chapter. He says, whatever your task, put yourselves into it as done for the Lord and not for your masters. Another version says, whatever you do, work heartily. Linda puts herself into her work. She walks through the doors God opens with her whole heart. Now, the heart in the ancient world was the core of the person. It meant not just feelings, as we often think of the heart, but the center of one's being, especially the will. So wholehearted devotion reflects that I choose to embrace with all my energies this task. In the words of the ancient hymn, the Hokey Pokey, I put my whole self in. Linda definitely puts her whole self into her work. How does she do this? Well, for one thing, before her shift even starts, Linda's on her knees praying. See, her devotion, her energies are not derived primarily from coffee or any other stimulant. She approaches the opportunities God gives her out of an overflow of God. Her heart is centered on Jesus. Brings up a really good question. Have you recently crossed the threshold of any open door? And if you have, how committed are you right now? You know, just like an EKG can measure the health of my physical heart, it's good to have a little instrument that can measure the level of my wholeheartedness in following God. So I'll give you a little instrument, some questions. Do I own my responsibility to grow? Do I read books, practice skills, meet with others farther down the road to help me develop? Do I complain about difficulties in a way that subtly rationalizes a half-hearted involvement? Do I deal with discouragements by talking with God and asking for the strength to persevere? Do I recognize and celebrate even small steps in the right direction? The Apostle Paul writes, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Zeal is a great power. I am to track it. I am to guard it. Am I honest about my zeal level these days? If my zeal is flagging, do I take steps of rest or renewal or play or discussion to renew it so that you can go through open doors with your whole heart?
My family was in construction growing up. I just fell into the trade and I do a little bit of everything, all types of building, remodeling, decorating. I've always felt that being a carpenter was very insignificant and that I kind of had fell short and missed the mark of what life was about. And that's kind of like what the world makes life to be about, and that's success related to money, success related to the things that you have. And I've always felt like I should do something bigger than what I was doing. God just impressed upon my heart that Jesus was a carpenter, and if it's good enough for the Savior of the world, then it should certainly be good enough for me. Woke up one day and felt like I should go use what God had given me as gifts and use that to better His kingdom instead of just working for money and for personal gain. My wife has a lot on her plate. She works a full-time job, and at times I feel guilty for leaving her at home to take care of the household while I'm gone. Initially, I started going down to Jamaica and Cuba with the church. Everyone that was initially involved, whom pledged commitment to this community and to the leaders of the community, they had kind of fell to the wayside, and I just felt that it was my obligation to continue to go down there and give of myself to these people. I use my credit card points that I buy all my materials on my credit card, and I use those points to get my flights. The people that live there, they don't have much, and my particular role was to help people that don't have a home or help people that are have a home that's in bad need of repair and they're getting wet every time it rains. And just allowed me to use my hands to help him. The type of work that I do, though I thought it was menial, by going on this trip, it's helped show me that nothing really is menial. It's just everything has a purpose.
Now, Michael's story touches on this aspect of wholehearted living that we've been talking about, where he once viewed his work as a carpenter as lacking importance and influence. He now sees the doors God has opened up to him, giving him ways to powerfully serve others through what he does. In the 10th chapter of Matthew, we're told the story of Jesus sending his disciples out to do ministry. He sends them out on their mission in pairs. Interestingly, we're not told who got paired with whom. Text doesn't say specifically where they were supposed to go. Jesus pays little attention to the details I'd most want to know. Where am I going? Who am I going with? What he is interested in is how they will go. He tells his followers how we're to be sent, and he gives 3 pictures. Each picture uses an animal to describe how we're to go through the doors God sets before us. These are like 3 dimensions of wholehearted living needed to enter open doors well. So first he says, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. This is kind of an unexpected metaphor. For one thing, the sheep is not exactly the most inspiring animal in the world. There are animal nicknames of all kinds for sports teams. There are bears, tigers, lions, diamondbacks, wolverines, badgers, sharks. These are all dangerous animals. The San Francisco sheep don't exist, just wouldn't inspire terror in anybody. I can only think of one even slightly famous sheep. When I was a kid, there was a puppeteer named Sherry Lewis, and she had a little sheep puppet that for some reason she named Lamb Chop, which is a terrible name to give a sheep. How do you make a lamb chop? You kill the sheep, then you eat it. But that's what she would call her little sheep puppet, Lamb Chop, just kind of weird. Anyway, Jesus says, I'm sending you out like sheep. He doesn't stop there. I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Question, how does a sheep go among wolves? Very carefully, very humbly. Sheep doesn't go out and say, hey, wolves, I'm here now to straighten you up. You better shape up. This assignment does not sound glamorous. But when you think about it, it would take some courage for a sheep to be sent to the wolves. To be sent as a sheep means I don't lead with how smart or strong or impressive I am. But it's a funny thing. Doors get open to sheep that would never be open to wolves. In calling his disciples sheep among wolves, Jesus is given kind of a paradox that in him, vulnerability is stronger than safety. That's why Paul was able to say in 2 Corinthians, when talking about the thorn in his flesh, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that he would take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecution, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. Jesus wants his followers to know that following him is not a promise to be successful. Doesn't mean that we're going to go out there and be covered with glory the way that our world thinks of glory. Sheep are not heroic animals. Part of what Jesus is calling his friends to is to die to the world standards of heroism, success, and glory. I have a little note on my desk quoting really wise words from a spiritual mentor. Don't strive to advance yourself. Let God advance you. Serve others. And that's how you go through open doors like a sheep. Now, since we're called to go out as sheep, Jesus also warns us, be wise as serpents. And I really love that Jesus included this one. A lot of times people think of Jesus as this kind of naive, well-intentioned dreamer who floated serenely above human difficulties and reality. And he was not, and among other things, he was really very serious about actually getting his work done. How do we know what doors God might open for us? Be wise as a serpent. Although open doors might involve mystery, generally they don't come at random. They call for a high degree of learning and awareness. And this reminds us of Michael's story. He was aware of his vocational calling to be a carpenter. He was self-aware. He was also aware of the very real needs of the people he went to serve in Jamaica. God opened the door. Michael had the awareness of himself and the needs of others, and he was primed to connect his gifts with others' needs. Wise people become students of the world as well as themselves. They do research about opportunities and job descriptions. They talk to people who are engaged in the kind of work or volunteering that interests them. They gather information about such possibilities all the time in conversations and reading and experiences. They run time-limited experiments and monitor both the outcome and their own responses. They reflect. Maybe, like Michael, they actually leverage credit card points accrued by doing business to take plane tickets to the mission field. And then Jesus' last dimension of wholehearted threshold crossing is be innocent as doves. Now, doves are, for the bird world, kind of what sheep are for the animal world. They're thought of as quite innocent creatures. The main thing that Jesus sends into the world is not what we do, it's who we are. And this too is a mark of wholeheartedness. Because what our world needs, God knows, is not just isolated outward deeds, but transformed character from within. That's what Jesus wants to release in the world. Jesus says, as the Father sent me, I send you. I want you to go like a sheep among wolves. I want you to be as shrewd, canny, clever, wise as a serpent, but I want you to be innocent like a dove. I want you to let God to work on your character, because the main thing you take in the world is not the stuff that you do. It's not the abilities that you accrue. It's who you are.
God opened two very different vocational doors for Linda and Michael, but they are both using the opportunities God has given them to make a positive impact on others. Linda uses her position to be a blessing to the people on her route. Michael is leveraging his skills as a carpenter to bless the underprivileged in Jamaica. How are you crossing the threshold of the doors God is opening for you? Is your heart fixed on pleasing Him and serving others, or on serving yourself? You'll have an opportunity to think about these and other questions as you open up God's Word with your group. See you next time.